क्लीं कैवल्य क्लीं कैवल्य क्लीं कैवल्य
Namaste and welcome to Kaivalya Yoga Gurukulam for this special series of the Kaivalya Marga classes dedicated to the chakras and the centers of consciousness that exist within us. Let us mindfully begin this satsang, this session, with 3 Oms. In today's class, we shall explore an intermediate level between these chakras. This aspect of the Kundalini in the Kundalini Yoga, the path, is not spoken of much, I would presume. And therefore, let me offer what I have learned and how, by divine grace, I have been able to ease through this level. Before I begin, if there is any technical difficulties, I will continue the class so it doesn't get interrupted. So we will have this on record and then we will upload it. If for some reason there is a serious audio or a video lapse, because we are recording this locally as well. So we will upload it later on. So please bear with us if there is some technical difficulties that arises on the internet live streaming, which is beyond our control. Navratri is a very special occasion, a divine occasion which is dedicated just to understand the nature of Devi. And like everything in Sanatana Dharma, all of this whole concept of gods, goddesses, in the Puranas, if you will, gods and goddesses, the Trimurtis, and so on, the Trinity, the Holy Trinity, and so on, all of them are internalized in a spiritual practice. It is one thing to worship them as an external deity. It is another thing if you want that energy, that deity to become sakshatkar, in other words, come alive to you, become real to you, quote unquote real, whatever your reality is, your definition is, in whatever dimension, for that to become real, then you have to internalize these energy centers and understand that all of these deities, all of these devas, all of them exist within us as energies, and they are primordially energies, powerful energies of the cosmos. And the rishis and the yogis and the saints have given us ways and means of tuning into this energy, of communicating with this energy, of worshipping this energy, of approaching it reverentially. That's what worship is, with humility. When you do so, then these deities come and begin to serve you. They are there to serve us. I know it sounds odd, but they are there to serve us, to look after us, to protect us, because in that realm, the divine realm of when these divine energies awaken, you will experience, you would have perhaps experienced, and you will experience only love. And there is only love there. And in that love, there is no differentiation of God and devotee, or guru and teacher and all. There's only love. There's equanimity and equality in all aspects that we can ever imagine. And therefore, when we study these chakras, granthis, and so on, and we talk about deities and mantras and so on, remember, we are unleashing the energies that is potent in these centers of consciousness, so that these energies begin to give us that clarity and help us, help this little eye to slowly blossom into the bigger eye. In other words, we begin to remember who we are. And that is symbolized as the Shakti principle from within meets the Shiva principle on top. Once we cross this, it is oneness. There is no coming back after that. And therefore, let us now talk about today's topic, which is Granthi, Brahma Granthi. So we talked about Mooladhara chakra. We talked a little bit about the Swadhisthana chakra. We are getting a little bit of idea what these are. Okay, this is a lifelong learning. And now we are coming to the third aspect of the Granthi. So let me go there. Let's go on to our slides and explore what this is. Brahma Granthi. So Granthi. What is Granthi? Let us take this, like I said, these are baby steps. So let's establish these foundations clear in our mind. Okay? What is a Granthi? Granthi is simply understood as a knot. A knot. It twists. In other words, something gets twisted and knotted, then you're not able to work with it. We have seen, if you want to use a rope, you want to use a thread, you want to use a piece of wire, for example, or a tie that you want to tie these wires, you get these plastic ties, and sometimes they get so knotted, you can't use them. So you want to open them up, and then you realize, okay, this is this long, and therefore you begin to use them. Knot. So understand, why is it called a knot? What does the knot signify? Knot signifies the inability for the flow to happen. If you have ever used a garden hose, which I suppose most of you would have, and the water begins to flow and you're watering the plants, and then there is a knot in the pipe. In other words, there is because these are long hoses, you're pulling it from there, and somewhere it gets knotted. In other words, it gets one over the other. What happens to the flow of water? It stops. You say, oh gosh, what happened? Suddenly it's just stopped. Why? The water is flowing, nobody closed the tap, but still water is not coming. Because of a knot in the hose. So knot, what is the function of a knot? The function of the knot is it prevents the flow of whatever is flowing through before the knot got applied, right? In this case, water in the water hose. So, in this case, Brahma Granthi, if you had read about it, perhaps you would have heard the words psychic knot and so on. I'm not so sure about the psychic knot, but it is a knot in the Manomaya Kosha. In the Manomaya Kosha. And that is what exhibits itself. All of this is taking place in an astral plane. In the Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, the impact is felt in the Annamaya Kosha. That's why I said chakras. Don't open the human anatomy book and look for chakras You use those regions merely as reference areas, because these are places that are predominantly just vibrational energy centers. I have never really succeeded, and I can speak from my practice, never really succeeded in locating the exact Muladhara chakra point or exactly seen the 4 petals. I don't feel it was necessary. I didn't realize I didn't need it at all. The mantras and everything took charge, and so those are in case you're so completely lost, and in order to get that mind even to a certain place, we perhaps need it. I'm not sure, but our lifestyle in Baba's ashram was already so spiritual. And I guess many of us who live a decently spiritual lifestyle, quote unquote, with some semblance of discipline and prayer and chant, and if you close your eyes and you're able to see a form, even though not very clearly, able to see a form of Krishna or Shiva and understand the meaning of the Trishulam and Om. I'm talking of the basic fundamentals of Sanatana Dharma and the concepts around all of this. Then you're already past the necessity to take exactly these 4 petals, how they should be, which is facing up or down. You don't need to worry about that. This is perhaps for someone who is very, very, very new to Sanatana Dharma, I would think. But if you're in this, don't get too bogged down by the technicalities of number of petals and so on. So this block that I'm talking of is not in a physical body, but its effect is felt in the physical body. I'll explain to that how. But the actual knot is in the Manomaya Kosha. The Manomaya Kosha is the mental sheath. You have the 5 sheaths, right? We have studied this in the Kaivalya Marga classes as well. The physical sheath, that is the sheath that is sustained by food. Then you have the Pranamaya Kosha, which is sustained by breath. Predominantly. Prana or life force, predominantly by breath, but prana comes in from water, prana comes in from the earth through the food, prana comes in from fire or warmth from the sun, prana comes in from mantras or sound, but predominantly we understand pranamaya kosha as the breath kosha, and it's okay. So pranamaya, so the life force that has come from all these 5 elements is the next sheath. And then comes manomaya kosha, the mental sheath, where our thoughts and emotions and all of that exist. So it's an important part. That is where the blockage is. And because of that, pranamaya and annamaya get affected. And the ability to go beyond gets affected. Okay? So this is basically a spiritual block. Granthi means a knot. And everything about a knot is blocking, period. And that knot has to be removed. Now, like chakras, there are no positives and negatives in this. This is kind of leans on the negative side. I have to use these words, positive, negative, good and evil, very mindfully. Because in my own personal dictionary, they are ceasing to exist slowly. It doesn't make sense to me calling something good or evil, positive or negative. So I'm using them mindfully just to set out an idea for you. A knot has to be removed, period. Let's look at it this way. A knot cannot sustain there. A knot cannot be there for spiritual progress. And the knot prevents the energy of the mind to go beyond a particular point. And even if it does escape, the knot pulls it back. Okay? So that's what the knot is. We'll explore this more, you'll get a better idea. Why is it called? So Granthi, we understood, is a knot. There are 3 like this Granthis in the different stages of the progress in spirituality. So we'll come to the second and the third stage later. Right now it is Brahma Granthi, the first Granthi that happens. Above the Muladhara and the Swadhisthana is Brahma Granthi. So why is it called Brahma Granthi? Brahma Granthi. These 3 Granthis were named after the 3 trinities, Brahma, Vishnu and Rudra. It's also called Shiva Granthi, but is more popularly known as Rudra Granthi in traditional sense. Rudra Granthi. In Lalita Sahasranama, in the 1,000 names of Lalita, they talk about her breaking through the Rudra Granthi, which is right on top. We'll come to that later. Brahma Granthi. Brahma Granthi. Why is it called Brahma Granthi? Here, understand the functions of these 3 deities. You will understand the predominant problem that is associated with this knot Again, I'm using the word problem mindfully. The effect that is associated with the knot. Brahma is what? The Trinity, that is the power or the energy that is associated with creation. Creation in this sense is in every literal sense creation, procreation, your ability to procreate, your ability to survive the species. So survival and procreation, which are the fundamental energies of Mooladhara and Swadhisthana. These are very close together. The moment a child is born, the immediate thing for the child is to survive, right? So all protection is given to the child to make it survive. So Swadhisthana and Mooladhara are very closely linked. We talked about this a little bit in the last two classes. So Brahma Granthi is that knot. It is called the procreation or survival, and together I'm used that word. I put a slash there because it's a combination of both of these. It is a knot that keeps your consciousness caught and doesn't go beyond procreation and survival. The ability to procreate, the need to procreate, okay, and survival. So think of the lessons or the energies that we talked about in Mooladhara and Swadhisthana, and those are the energies that consciousness gets trapped in. We talked yesterday about Swadhisthana is where the consciousness begins to think this is the home. Why is this a home? Because of this knot. Why does the consciousness self begins to foolishly think that this is the home, this is the reality, senses are giving me the pleasure, this is the pleasure I want more pleasure from the senses, I want more food to eat, better food to eat, tastier food to eat, I want more softer things to touch, I want silk cloth to be touched on, to be worn, I want beautiful colors to be seen, right? All of these is where the consciousness is now getting trapped. And then it determines, okay, this is fun, this is great, this is wonderful. What more do we need in life? This is more than enough. Bas maja aa raha hai. Right? Why? Is because the knot prevents the consciousness from going beyond this. And yet there are moments of divine grace that we experience, creativity, passion, we experience all of that from the higher centers, but the consciousness gets pulled back. Why is it getting pulled back? Because of this knot. It comes back and settles down in Swadhisthana and Mooladhara for most of us, if not all of us. Unless you're living with a guru and the divine grace of the guru keeps your consciousness above this all the time. Most of the time we are caught in what? Oh, I've not had my sleep, I need to get my sleep. Or, oh, I've not had my food, when is my next food coming? Oh, what is the meal for today? What is the menu for today? Or what is there for entertainment? I'm so bored, yaar, I need some entertainment. Oh, this is such a boring lecture, just looking at his face. I need some more colors, I need some more sounds, I need something. The brain is stimulated and so on. You ask yourself like this, am I caught most of the time in my day like this? If it is, then the consciousness is within this. Boredom is one of the greatest obstacles in the path of yoga. Because boredom is an illusion of the mind. It is created. The mind wants, what does the mind want? Mind wants to engage the senses. And spirituality withdraws from the senses. The mind says, oh, this is boring. There's nothing to see, nothing to hear, nothing to smell, nothing to touch. You're just closing your eyes and going within. It's boring, it's boring, it's boring. And then it pulls you back. The ability for the mind to go beyond is because of a knot in the mind. Manomaya kosha, Brahma Granthi exists. And because of that knot, the mind is unable to go beyond a particular level. Okay? And this knot is something even the greatest of yogis experiences. This is, how do you keep this knot loose and how do you keep it open? Only through sadhana. Anytime, I can talk to you a lot like this. I can talk to you for the next 1 year, give you a lot of these lectures. If my personal sadhana is not keeping me alive, then my knot will bring me back to the Mooladhara and Swadhisthana. There is no human being with a human body that can say that this knot is completely permanently open. There is no such thing. It's like saying, I am completely healthy, now give me poison I can eat, nothing will happen. Now these are all fantasies that we can engage ourselves. Yes, so-and-so can do, so-and-so can do and all of that. But in reality, if you have a human body and if you are alive, know that your consciousness can be pulled back into the Mooladhara and Swadhisthana, and this knot can once again block the energies. If our spiritual lifestyle, if everything else that surrounds a spiritual path begins to become, you start compromising on that. Let's say, oh, I'm too lazy to meditate today, I'm going to meditate after a week, I'm going to take a break from all this, and so on. When you do take a break, the knot comes back. Slowly it begins to tie yourself, and you're again back to the same old level of reality. Not that it is bad, it is what it is. I'm just telling you exactly what it is. And then when you do spiritual practices, along with yogic practices and all that we talked about, this knot begins to loosen. So this is basically a procreation survival knot. All right. So where is this knot located? Again, as I said, these are references in the human body for us to understand, just like you had chakras and understanding. And by the way, I did get text from 3 people, again 3 to 4 people who texted me, and there was one email also. We said, do we have to progress one at a time? It's not, in other words, does the Mooladhara have to open first, but I've already experienced some opening in the heart chakra, and why am I experiencing this, and so on. I'll make it very clear, this is not the way we understand progress psychologically is, oh, I have to come up the ladder of success. You have to start with the lower rung and go up slowly. In an organization, if I have to be successful, I enter in as a programmer, then I become a team leader, then I become a vice president, and so on, right? And a CEO or whatever. So we understand progress as something from down and going up. And in other words, we understand progress as a linear progression. In spirituality, it's not like that. In chakras, it's not like that. It's not a linear progression. You approach all these chakras with all these sadhanas and let the divine grace guide you. Because, why? Because we don't know where we left off in our previous lifetimes. Where are we taking this from? The fact that you're starting it could be your first, we don't know that, right? Or could be you're continuing a practice that you started in your previous lifetime, and the time has come for you to renew the practice. And so don't understand this necessarily as a linear progression, and then you'll get stuck with only Mooladhara, saying, first I have not even experienced anything in Mooladhara, so how can I progress? Don't worry, it doesn't work like that. We work on all the chakras in a sadhana as we will understand how to make the sadhana and blend it into our daily routine or weekly routines. Then all of this will continue. And based on planetary conjunctions, based on horoscope, there are so many variations that happen for all of that to fall in place. But beyond all of that, there is a divine grace. That is why the mantras come in. It breaks through all these and provides a shortcut. Anyway, where is this located? It's very easy for me to get distracted when I talk about these. But I'm learning. Let me stay focused on the Brahma Granthi. So, where is this located? This is located above the Mooladhara and Swadhisthana. So you have the Mooladhara chakra, the Swadhisthana chakra, and just above that it is located. Now I'll give you a particular location here. If you take the forefinger like this, and from your navel you go below, over your navel you place one finger like this, covering the belly button. Okay, the belly button is right here. You cover it with this finger, and then you go 1, then you go 2, below, you're going below, then you go 3, you go 4, you go 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, the 11th finger. 11 fingers below the navel is where the Brahma Granthi is, the knot is. And it is when you break, when that knot opens is when the Sushumna Nadi is open for the Shakti to enter. Otherwise she's just awake. It's like you're getting up from sleep and don't know what to do. Right? Child, let's say a baby wakes up in her cradle, his or her cradle, and she wakes up, she doesn't know what to do. So what she does, she just starts wailing, creating noise, and then the mother comes running and then guides to the bathroom or whatever, right? So it is, that's what happens when the Shakti awakens. There is turmoil because there is this block. So this divine mother is awakening, and all these other centers becoming active. So it's like a pressure cooker being built up, literally. I'm not, don't take this too much literally and get afraid, because this is where people say it's dangerous and fearful and all of that. So that is why I'll tell you how these will get neutralized. Okay, so don't worry about it. Because of that, what happens is, because of this block, the Sushumna Nadi is still blocked. The Sushumna Nadi is a central Nadi, the central system, the central where the energies go, the right and the left Nadis, that is the Surya Nadi, the Nadi or the astral nerve, the prana that flows from the right and the left begin to enter through the middle. So let's hold on to that thought for a second. For now. 11 fingers below the navel, the knot is blocking the entrance. Okay, this is also called as the snake holds the tail in her mouth and all of that. She's lying dormant. She's holding this nagin, if you will. The cobra is holding the tail in her mouth, and so it's blocked. This blockage that we are talking about is the Brahma Granthi. It's visualized in many different scenarios. If the idea of snake is in any way fearful in your mind, please don't visualize that as a snake. The snake is just used as a symbolic representation, because there was no fear of snakes at the time when all this was written. The dharma, the righteousness was so high, the level of interacting with nature was so high that there was no harm caused by any of these. So this is all in Satya Yuga, and yugas which are more than 1 million years old were written. All of this was written. So, but right now, if that snake idea causes fear, don't think of it as Divine Mother. Okay. So she wakes up, you have to guide her there. But why we are not able to guide her? Because there is a blockage. We don't know what to do. So whenever there is intense meditation, whenever there is spiritual practice, whenever there is intense awakening, you will find an intense rush back as well. You'll find you might find, I'm not saying this is it's not a rule, you might find extremely high moods, and then you'll find extremely depression. You will say, oh, this is great, and then the next 2-3 days, oh, nothing is happening, I'm so depressed, and all of that happens is because of this block that is happening. So it makes this energy inside has to be guided, otherwise it is going to create this kind of going up and back and forth to a large extent. Okay. Brahma Granthi is situated 11 fingers below the navel. The effects of Brahma Granthi. What are the effects of Brahma Granthi? Let us explore the effects on the Annamaya Kosha, the physical level, the body level. Okay? What are these effects? None of these effects are good. Like I said, a knot is a knot. It is blocking the energy. So what are the effects? How will you know that this block exists? Think of these, okay? There is excessive sensual urges. When the mind is caught, excessive urge means excessive urge. I'm not talking of regular, normal urge. I'm talking of excessive urge. When there is an excessive urge towards taste, food, for example. That is why Swadhisthana and the tongue are very related. When there is an inability to bring discipline into your senses, then you know that this knot is very strong. The mind is not able to break free from that. It just gets dragged back. When habits really drive you, then you know that some parts of those knots are still holding your consciousness back. So excessive sensual urges. In other words, I want to eat good food. I want to see good things. You're affected largely by colors. Affect you see, go to somebody's home and you see a bright red color. You're like, oh, I don't know what these people were thinking. We immediately make up our mind about the nature of the people or the character of the people and all of that. But they may or may not be like that. That is not a problem at all. What that is a reflection of what is going on inside me. How I have defined a bright red color equals what, or a bright green color equals what. Okay? We might make these negative associations, positive associations, and those replay. When they are excessive and they cause me to make excessive judgments and so on, it all is just excessive sensual urges. I just broadly said that. cravings, if there is excess cravings in any of these sense-related activities, then it is a block. That is why in very traditional practices of yoga, if you read, I think it is in Shiva Samhita, it's been ages since I've read those again, but it's in Shiva Samhita, it talks about yogis not listening to music, like the veena or the flute. Now you might it might say, what do you mean, no music, right? It's like no rules and grammar, and this is how music should be sung, that is how music should be sung. Those are schools of thought. So when you begin to listen to particular thing and say this is how it should be, then you get caught in that. So the idea is to free yourself from that. Listen to sounds, musical sounds, but not necessary music. Don't take this literally. The idea here is don't get too caught up and this is how music should be, or this is how it should be, and whether it's color, whether it's sound, whether it is taste, whether it is sight, and all of this. Okay? So think about that. Then it also comes as diseases of the lower extremes. When there is disease of the lower extremes, it's generally understood. If you go to a Hatha Yogi practitioner or a Hatha Yoga guru, you would say, okay, there is it's a Mooladhara Swadhisthana issue, and there is a tremendous block in the Granthi that is preventing the energy from going up, and therefore you have diseases of the lower extreme. These are just thoughts, okay? Again, there are always exceptions to many rules here. But I am giving you these ideas to consider. Then laziness in the body, sloth in the body, all of these, then inability to do physical activities. Now inability, it can also come out of old age. But when I say physical activities, I'm talking about if you're not even able to walk. That is a level, right? That is an extreme. These are extreme levels we are talking about. But if you are able to walk, but you're not able to do as much, as that energy in your body is not there. So your physical activities start getting very tired. Then there is this Granthi that has to be released. This is why in yoga and in nowadays in mind-body medicine, we say that all of this that's happening in the body has a relation in the mind. So in yoga, they take it to a very clear understanding. Okay, that this is because of the knot in the mind, all this is happening. The knot is preventing the actual consciousness from moving upwards. Even if it loosens up, that is good enough, right? Think of the water hose. The hose, the pipe, even if it gets a little loose, water will start flowing. But if the knot is very tight, the water completely stops. Correct? And builds pressure, starts going backwards. There's pressure here. And that pressure can burst the pipe, can do all of that. So this becomes loose. This loosening of the knot are the effects, are the spiritual activities that we'll talk about in a bit. Okay? But the effects are these. Inability to do physical activities. So these are some of the physical things that, just to give you an idea. Okay? I'm just throwing open these ideas for you to consider. That these are all because of the Brahma Granthis. So when you start, why do we do this? Because when I start understanding that the problem is in the mind, not just some physical thing. You can't beat yourself and push yourself to do something physically without understanding that the problem lies inside, deep inside. So in addition to say, I want to overcome laziness, I'm going to set the alarm and wake up every morning. You should also consider this is causes in my head. So how do I tackle it? How do I tackle this manomaya kosha, the knot that is in my mind, and remove that knot? So that is in the effects of Brahma Granthi on the physical level. Now comes a very important thing, the prana level. Prana level, apana, vayu. There are 5 vayus. Again, when I come to the air element in the Kaivalya Marga classes, we will explore more in detail. Now let us understand these 2 simple vayus. Prana vayu and apana vayu. 2 vayus out of the 5 vayus and many other vayus. So let's understand only 2 vayus now. Prana vayu is that from the Granthi upwards, it moves generally upwards. Okay? Let's take belly button as a general place. From the belly button upwards, the prana vayu moves up. Apana vayu is that, so when you feel upbeat, when you feel enthusiastic, when you feel exhilarations, positive mindset, excited about something, it's all prana moving up. Okay, ability to breathe freely and so on. It's all prana moving up. Okay. Apana Vayu, on the other hand, is that which is creates downward pressure when there is gas passing out of your system, when there is bowels that needs to be evacuated, when you have an urge to urinate, when there are sexual urges, and all sensual urges are related to Apana Vayu because it pulls the consciousness downwards and holds it in the Swadhisthana. So Apana Vayu is not bad. It's very important to cleanse it, cleanse the body, right? So Apana Vayu plays its role of moving downwards. In yoga, in any form of spiritual activity, in bhajans and in all of these, okay, what happens is this Apana Vayu, because consciousness begins to move upwards, this Apana Vayu, instead of going downwards, begins its upwards journey. You don't have to be aware of this. This is a natural process. The Apana Vayu begins to move upwards. That is why during bhajans, unless there is an exception, generally during bhajans or during satsang or during a nice moments, you won't feel hungry at all. It'll be like think of times, also moments of deep creativity when you're painting or drawing or singing or doing something which you really love. You're not thinking of sleep and sloth and laziness. None of this affects. Like you're into that. That means Apana Vayu is beginning to move up. So the knot is beginning to loose there at that time. Then it becomes tight again and it comes down. That's a different matter. But those are moments when Apana Vayu begins to move up. What happens in the knot? What is one of the main problems of Brahma Granthi is this knot prevents the Apana Vayu from going upwards and meeting the prana. Apana has to meet prana. You're pushing in spiritual practices. When we do the Jalandhara Bandha, the Prana Vayu is pushed down. When we do the Mula Bandha, the Apana Vayu is pulled up. Then the Uddiyana Bandha joins them together, and together it enters the Sushumna Nadi. Okay, allow these things to happen. You and I can't make it consciously happen, and only don't believe that this happens through visualization. No, this happens. Period. The more we practice these bandhas, the more our nadis get cleansed because of yoga practices and proper food habits and sadhana and so on. The more it gets cleansed, the more you will become aware of this happening, right? And the more you become aware of this happening, you will enjoy the exhilaration and all that follows. Okay, visions become clearer and all the deities appear to you and all of that. All this is happening, but we are clouded. We don't know it's happening inside. That is why we say start practicing. Don't worry, practice will clear all this. So Apana Vayu moves up, prana goes down, it meets in that 11 fingers below in the Brahma Granthi opens, and both of them enter the Sushumna Nadi. And when they enter the Sushumna Nadi, Kundalini goes into the Sushumna Nadi. The Divine Mother, the Self, the little I enters. That is when we enter into deep meditation. Okay? This is what happens. But why we don't experience, why do we say we enjoyed it, but then I can't hold that focus, it starts coming back. How do I maintain this concentration, this heightened level of awareness for the rest of the days? Why am I not able to see God in everyone? All of this is because of Brahma Granthi. Brahma Granthi prevents this consciousness from staying up there. It comes back and the knot becomes tight. Because we go back to our other lifestyle, which is tightens the knot, not loosens them, tightens the knot. Okay, Apana Vayu. Apana Vayu has to move up freely. So, one of the ways you can understand that your spiritual practice, your yogic practices are in good stead is your bowel movement will be very healthy, and everyday bowel movement will be extremely healthy. We'll explore this more as we understand the fire element in the Kaivalya Marga classes, because that needs a whole understanding. Food has to be good and so on. So the bowel movement has to be healthy, number one. Number two, there should be very less or in fact zero gas going out of your system. In other words, if you're farting too much, then you know Apana Vayu is not going up, it is going the other way around. And it's so the effect of meditation is going to be practically zero. It will have some minor effects and some blessing, but there's no way to sustain that, okay, into a true spiritual awakening. Will not happen. Apana Vayu has to move upwards. So That is why in some class, I did mention this earlier, and I want to say that if you are passing excess gas out of your body, the popular word is fart. I don't know. It sounds very unsocial when I say that. But you get what I'm saying. If there's too much gas passing out of your body, immediately correct your food habits. And make sure you don't do that. If you are a serious practitioner of spirituality and yoga, then you have to first stop that, number one. And then work the rest. If Apana Vayu is extreme, then that's not going to happen. Okay? Then comes the effects of Brahma Granthi in the Manomaya Kosha. So this is where the main problem is, right? So at the physical level we thought, at the pranic level we saw that. In the Manomaya Kosha, let me put them all out here. I think there are only 2 or 3 of them. Okay, so there is just these 2. I categorize them all into these 2 points. So one is the thoughts are trapped in the reality of the senses. We already saw this. All your thinking is in this realm of the senses only, most of the time. That this is blue, that is white, what am I going to eat, and it's taste. Think of the nature of your thoughts. Not that it is good or bad, it is what it is. Like I always keep saying, that don't immediately judge to saying, oh my gosh, I am so caught up in this. That is this, the Swadhisthana is also a divine level. It's a beautiful level of consciousness. There's a reason why this is given to us by nature, to enjoy this, because this is a trailer of what the Agnya Chakra is actually going to give you. So this is a small trailer of this big movie that sits here. So don't underestimate it, don't look down upon it. I never look down upon sensual experiences as bad. Understand that these are little trailers to the bigger movie that is presented later on. Okay? So the thoughts are trapped. We get trapped because we think the trailer is the movie. But the trailer never gives you the full story. So you always left unfulfilled. And then you go back to the trailer, hoping this time at least the trailer will tell you the story. The trailer of a movie will never tell you the story. The trailer is always going to be incomplete. That's why I use the word trapped. We get trapped in the senses. In the mind, in the thought level, we get trapped. So how does that affect some of the extreme cases? And I'm talking of extremities here. You get depressed. I'm not talking of clinical depression. That is also an effect, but I'm not going to discuss that. This is simply, generally, you just feel sad and depressed. Oh God. You look at some excuse, some silly excuse. Oh, why this is not happening for me? And something will upset you. And so there is depression. There is dullness in the mind, inability to think clearly. There is dullness. You'll feel a sense of loneliness, sadness, low self-esteem, inability to socialize. All of these are effects of Brahma Granthi. So yoga practice helps in, just imagine the effect of Hatha yoga practice now. Why these yoga asanas were prescribed and not these advanced, intricate pretzel-like poses. That if your body allows you to practice, you can practice. That is good. But because you're doing a crazy twisted pose doesn't mean your Brahma Granthi is far more open than somebody else. No, the lifestyle is what creates, the sadhana creates it. But asanas are an important thing. The body has to begin to move. Physical activities have to be, a certain level of flexibility, strength and balance has to exist in the body for this Brahma Granthi to open fully for you to experience this. Kundalini Shakti. So don't worry about Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha. Annamaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha and Anandamaya Kosha. For those of you who know the 5 koshas, you might say, why did you stop at the 3rd kosha? Brahma Granthi doesn't go beyond that. Brahma Granthi just is stuck with the Bhuloka, Bhuvarloka and elements of Swarloka. In other words, the body, the prana and the mind. That's where the Brahma Granthi is all about. Once you release that, consciousness begins to travel beautifully to higher planes and higher dimensions. So when I keep talking of higher dimensions, higher plane, higher deities, divine beings, unique experiences and dreams and all of that is because the Brahma Granthi begins to open. Once that begins to open, then you will experience it clearly. Nobody needs to tell you. You don't have to visualize it. You will experience it. And I'm sure many of you listening to this would have experienced this in many times. Very unique, significant, vivid dreams of your guru coming in your dream or a deity coming in your dream and so on. These are all These are all experiences where by either by divine grace or by your own effect of your own sadhana, the Granthi becomes loose and the consciousness begins to flow. Then what happens? We celebrate. We eat a few more laddus than we should, and the knot tightens, and you come back to square one. So we get caught. That is why we get caught into, we go to one guru after another, read one book after the other, always looking for answer without actually beginning to transform our lives. So an ounce of sadhana is 100 times more powerful than research on the internet. Something for you to think about. Kundalini Shakti gets trapped. In other words, this divine consciousness of ours, this ability for Shakti to even look up towards Shiva, gets trapped here. That is why the second night she becomes, in Swadhisthana Chakra, she becomes Brahmacharini. Okay, so we talked about in the puja time, we talk about first see Shailaputri, the daughter begins to leave her father's house, the mountain. Mountains are earth element. She begins to leave that because she's born from there. She leaves the earth element, then she becomes Brahmacharini in the second. She performs austere tapas, in other words, disciplined life. Austerity is a very relative term. What is austerity? So each of us have to decide what is our austerity, and our levels of austerity will increase. Our ideas of discipline will become more and more clearer. Discipline, austerity, in other words, the senses are now being controlled and harnessed, and then the knot begins to loosen. So she becomes Brahmacharini. So it begins to loosen. That is what happens. The Shakti, otherwise she is trapped in the Mooladhara. MS is basically Mooladhara and Swadhisthana. I didn't have space to write that. So the vortex of this consciousness, the energy, she gets trapped there. So for those of you who would have experienced Kundalini Shakti, this is what would have happened. Because Brahma Granthi was very tight, the pressure cooker like effect happens, and it leads to bizarre experiences of nightmares, mood swings, and some people get caught in this for years together or decades together. That is why Hatha Yoga, Kundalini, believe me, Kundalini Shakti, Kundalini Yoga has always been hand in glove with Hatha Yoga practice. It was part of the Hatha Yoga, it's part of the Tantric practice. So you can't practice one thing in isolation. A Sri Chakra, I'm talking this only from experience. When I do the Sri Chakra Puja or when I do the Lalita Sahasranama, I translate that into my Hatha Yoga practice. And together they help me in making this a very beautiful journey. So there is a lot of hard work involved. Just like if you love Pandit Jasraj singing a beautiful song, if you love these person and their voice is very divine and lifts you up, think of how much of effort they would have put, how many hours of practices they would have put in their voices to bring out that beauty. If you ask them, they're just going to smile and say, oh, it will take hours. Not everybody can do this, correct? Because they would have put that much hours. If they stop it, if they start eating junk food and stop all of that, what will happen to their voice? It will go back to becoming like you and me. So they have to keep up that practice. It's the same thing in spirituality as well. So when we practice all of this together, the Shakti begins to move very beautifully. There's no pressure cooker effects at all. Little here and there, but really nothing much. She begins to move. You allow her, you make space for her, you give her the importance in life. In other words, spirituality becomes very important. Everything else begins to revolve around your sadhana. Your sadhana, your spiritual practice of meditation and yoga, all of that becomes firm. Like in Vrikshasana. And I stand firm in one leg. What does that one foot remind me? My sadhana, my practice. We should never ever stop. And you begin to enjoy the practice just for the joy of it. Everything else, all of these other things will automatically go. This is only a theoretical learning of what is going on. Don't get too analytical about it. Okay? Just to tell you what is the effect of Brahma Granthi is why I shared all this. Asana practice. So here, now we are going to combine Mooladhara and Swadhisthana practices. As long as you keep the Mooladhara Swadhisthana practices that we talked about yesterday together, then these things automatically, the Granthi begins to open. So asanas and kriyas along with the bandhas. We talked about asana practice, right? Hip moving, hip opening routines for Mooladhara. We talked about kriyas like the sun salutations. when you do these practices along with bandhas like Uddiyana Bandha and Mula Bandha, that's how we are learning in our yoga classes, daily online yoga classes. So we are learning that, right? To do the asanas with the bandhas. Why am I teaching that? Because automatically when you do it with the bandhas, you begin to loosen the knot. These are all this happens at a very deeper level. You don't have to worry about this. This is just to know what is going on internally as you're doing this. That's all. Leave it at that. Okay, don't, you can't, it's like opening the body to see where the Granthi is. It's not there. So this happens at a very subtle astral plane, astral dimension, if you will. Then the Bandha and Mudra practice, we have already talked about the Mula Bandha and Vajroli Mudra. These bandhas, this Mula Bandha and Vajroli Mudra, this is what helps in taking the consciousness above. It begins to loosen the knot at a psychic level. Okay? Then pranayama practice. Pranayama practice is slightly different. What is here? Here it is the Anuloma Viloma Pranayama. This is why Anuloma Viloma became so popular. When they say it cleanses the nadis, it begins to cleanse all the nadis. This is what is happening. Basically, Anuloma Viloma. That means the Chandra is, you might get confused if I'll say this is my left hand, this is my right hand, right? Chandra Nadi, left side. Surya Nadi, right side. So in Mooladhara, what I did, I breathed in and exhaled through the sun consistently. Then for Swadhisthana, I breathed in, inhaled, exhaled through my left consistently. In, out, correct? Now, what I will do is I will breathe in through the left, out through the right, in through the right, out through the left. So in, out, in, out, in, out. Anuloma Viloma, also known as Nadi Shodhana Pranayama. You close your right nostril, you breathe in through the left, exhale through the right, inhale through the right, exhale through the left. Left in, right out. Right in, left out. You're forming a constant triangle, a scrubbing action, if you will. Scrubbing, scrubbing, scrubbing. It goes like this. In, out, in, out. So scrubbing action. That begins to loosen the knot. The nadis become clear constantly. So how do you translate this into everyday practice? Consider these things. These are again ideas for you to consider. 16 minutes of Surya Veda Pranayama along with the mantra. You can practice the pranayamas with mantras, right? I can breathe in and breathe out. Sun. Om Gang Ganapataye Namaha. I usually do it like this. I breathe in. Om Gang Ganapataye Namaha. 16 minutes. And then breathe in. Om Aim Hrim Shrim Shiva Shaktyatmikaya Hrim Shrim Aim Om. So I breathe in, do the Chandra Nadi. Now it's Anuloma Viloma Pranayama. Here you can use a mantra of your choice. Ideally it's Ram. Ram is the best mantra because it's simple and you can focus on 4:8. 4:8. 4:8. So Anuloma Viloma is a very safe practice because when I mention all those effects, some of you might say, but I am 70 years old, I'm 80 years old, or I'm 65 years old. Now where am I talking about? How can I do these practices and Hatha Yoga and all? Begin with Anuloma Viloma Pranayama. And let the divine guide you. This is an amazing practice. Don't underestimate it because it is so simple. It's a very powerful practice. So 16 minutes, 16 minutes, 16 minutes, you can do it like that. Okay? Something for you to consider. Think about it. Anuloma Viloma Pranayama. Then comes meditation practice is Jyoti or the flame. But now what you do is, so we are continuing the same practice of Jyoti. We are taking it all around the body. We are doing all of that just like Baba would instruct us. So the meditation of the flame is there. Finally, you let the flame settle in that place. This is why I said about the 11 fingers. The reason why I shared that is only for this meditation practice. If you are doing this Jyoti, place the Jyoti 11 fingers below the navel and let it be there. Let her be there. Let the heat of that Jyoti slowly burn the knot off. Okay? if there's an element of visualization there. Let her sit there. Let the Jyoti be there. Place the Jyoti at the Brahma Granthi. That's all you need to do. That's the only difference here from the meditation and the Mooladhara and Swadhisthana. So anytime you're meditating on the Jyoti, you're automatically cleansing the Mooladhara and Swadhisthana. Your basic, your consciousness is breaking free from this. So at the end of all of this, place the Jyoti in the Brahma Granthi. Place the Jyoti in the Brahma Granthi. So there was a time when I was very caught up in, again, the same old things, right? I'm a young man trying to practice, and I had all of these blocks, and I would ask Baba so many things. In the course of that one interview where he spoke about these chakras, when he spoke about the Granthi, his foot was actually resting on I was sitting very close to him, right under his feet. So his foot was resting first on my feet instead of his own footstool. He pushed that away, put his foot on me, and was talking. And then with his toe, he started pressing this spot, exact spot I'm talking about. And then, and he was continuing this talk. At the end of it, when I referred to the Jyoti meditation, he said, ultimately place the Jyoti there for you, it is good. And I understood that as a helping for me to break through from this. Otherwise, the consciousness keep coming back to food and sleep and anything else that we are so accustomed to, right? How does it break free? How do I know that the other dimensions even exist? And when I started practicing that, it is amazing how doors began to open. It just began to open. And so that's why I ascribe all of this to Baba's grace. I can't speak of any other way. But he pointed me to exact spot, and he said, that is the spot. Your problem is there. That is the spot. He pointed as he pressed it with his toe, big toe. I said, that is the spot. Place the Jyoti there. Everything will become okay. So that's what I'm sharing. Namasmarana practice. This is again, he said. Another thing is Namasmarana practice. Bring kirtans and bhajans into your life, because one thing is pushing. This is exactly, I'm paraphrasing, of course, Baba's words. So he says one thing is pushing the Shakti upwards. The other one is pulling it upwards. What is pulling upwards? How do you attract the Shakti upwards? It is by singing Namasmarana. He said, if you sing kirtans and bhajans, in other words, if you do Namasmarana alone, that itself is powerful. But take that with a pinch of salt. If you say Namasmarana every day, I'm doing bhajans, the rest of the time I'm watching televisions and I'm criticizing everyone and I'm believing in a different reality, it's not going to help you. It's not like that. These are all, when Baba is talking about it, he's talking about the level of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Mirabai, and Rama Anujacharya and Adi Shankara. The heights of, when you're singing God's name, you just lose yourself there completely. Kirtan and bhajans are so important. It's not about who's singing better and am I singing in the microphone and all of that. That is besides the point. This is a sadhana. So you can listen and then transport yourself there. Because that begins to open and draw the energy upwards. That is where the divine grace is drawing the energy upwards. Allow that to happen. Vedic chants, mantras, Bijakshara mantras, Vedic chants, if you listen to it, even if you don't know, if you're listening to the chant alone, it begins to open this Brahma Granthi, open our consciousness. Now, these are not overnight practices. This happens over a period of time. Okay, so Bhakti Marga does the same effect. They may or may not realize it, but this is what is happening. Kundalini Shakti, it's ultimately, see, we are talking of the same energy through different means, right? So these are what Baba told, specifically Kirtan, Bhajan, what you are doing, that is more than enough. Because I told him, what are the practice? He said, Bhajan Partana Kada, Adi Chese, Bhaga Che, Adi Chalu. He said, whatever you're singing bhajans, right, keep singing that. That is more than enough. So, very powerful practice for Brahma Granthi. If Brahma Granthi opens, trust me, or you don't have to worry about, oh gosh, my habits are pulling me back. Everything becomes so easy. Habits easily come under your control. Because you begin to taste higher dimensions, your interest in sensual experiences drop down. Your interest in food drops down. Your hunger and thirst come down a lot. It doesn't mean you'll become thin and vanish. No, it just you'll get the energy from the food and all that, but your craving for all of this will go down because the Brahma Granthi opens. Satsang, group practice. Satsangam. Satsangam is another thing he pointed out in that interview, and it was a very powerful thing. He said satsangam is very important. Good company. And he said the best company is to sit with God, of course. That is Baba's level. He said just sit with God as your company. That is the best. You can do that. So you're never feeling the sense of loneliness that comes. So satsanga, consider group practices where you sit together and sing, where you sit together and discuss these things, where what we do as online satsangs is merely all of the other things that I spoke about automatically takes place when we do that. When we simply lift and allow the consciousness to expand, the knot becomes loose because the power of God's name begins in that. Like I said, these are power of God's name is not only a matter of belief and faith, but the name has power. There is bijakshara, there is mantra, there is energy in that name. The word Ram breaks through and frees the knot. Okay? The word Hanuman breaks through and frees, the consciousness begins to flow. So satsangs, Vedic chants, if you can chant together, if you can listen to the chants, if you can do kirtans, all of this are, because the Granthi, the knot cannot be consciously loosened. You can do these practices, but how do you loosen? You don't know. So only allow the divine grace to make it happen. And lastly, fine arts. Painting, poetry, music, sculpture, dance, all of this operate from a higher center of consciousness. So the more we engage there, the more this knot is unable to hold the consciousness, it becomes loose. That's why I'm saying all of us experience this when we caught up in painting or drawing. I didn't use the word drawing, but I assume that is included in painting, where you write poetry, you sing, practice singing, you are into sculpture, in dance or anything creative. Anything creative. I thought I added that point. Anything creative. So even if when we do this technical online thing, we want to see how more creative can we be, because when you engage in that creativity, a higher center of consciousness opens up. Okay? And that begins to loosen the knot. Because you're not pushing from down and creating a pressure cooker effect, you're pulling from the top as well. Okay, so painting, dance, that's why all of this was part and parcel of a child's life as he or she were growing up when they were young. Archery was taught as a spiritual practice. Yogasanas was part of their practice. Painting, dance, poetry, music, all of this was part of their upbringing. Now modern science will say this is also training the right side of the brain. So that is one way to interpret it. But more importantly, you're allowing the consciousness, the pranic energy, to start moving upwards along with the apana vayu. So the consciousness enters Shushumna, and a larger dimension of creativity opens. The ability for your talents to express themselves unheeded or unimpeded begins to happen. That is why I keep saying you live life more fully. You live life more enriched. You live life more empowered because of these practices. So none of these practices are designed to take you away, but to actually help you. And I think I am done. Good. I am glad I'm a few minutes behind, but I'm glad I managed to share some of these important points. Please take time to watch these again, make your notes, and contemplate. See how it makes sense to you. Open your heart to the divine and know that none of the practices that the Sanatana Dharma set out for us, none of the practices of an ashram-like lifestyle. You can make your home into an ashram. You don't have to live somewhere else. You can think about how it can be, and it doesn't have to be done overnight, but slowly begin to take those baby steps, and the divine will guide you, provide you the necessary motivation, encouragement. Choose be mindful of what you watch on television. Don't create and watch things that will disturb you emotionally and things like that. Allow those, be mindful of what kind of energies enter your home through your television these days. That's important. Through the internet, through your phones, what kind of energy enters, what kind of WhatsApp messages I keep checking. This is very important because look at that. Okay. This creates the energy patterns that either start tying the knot or loosens. So think of that. Think of that. Slowly make your home an ashram, then your body becomes an ashram, body becomes a temple. And the God within begins to awaken, and the experience is so phenomenally beautiful. Thank you for your patience. I hope this class was beautiful and helpful more than anything. And let's continue our learning in the next few classes. So with offering this class to the Divine and offering my salutations to the Divine, I bring this class to an end. We'll end with one Om and three Shantis. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti